I'm Emmy. I'm from Vivant Vintage, and today we're going to do the t-shirt transformation tutorial. In this tutorial, you'll learn basic t-shirt tailoring skills such as cutting out the neckline, capping the sleeves, and shortening the hem. So your t-shirt might look something like this when it's done. In part 2, we will go over the V-neck cutout and how to fringe the bottom, how to cut the armpits out correctly to make a tank top, so your t-shirt might turn into something like this. And in part 3, we will be learning how to turn a large t-shirt into a dress. So you could make this. Let's go over the materials that you'll need. First of all, you'll need some t-shirts. If you need any cool vintage tees, you can always head over to Vivant Vintage. We've got every size and color and fun graphic you can imagine. You'll need a ruler. You will need a pair of fabric scissors. I highly recommend not using your fabric scissors to cut paper or thread, as it will dull them. 1/4 inch bias tape. This is for finishing the neckline and the armpits of tank tops. We'll need some pins. Tailor's chalk. It comes in the kind of classic chalk nub version, and pencils. A seam ripper, scissors. These small scissors are more for like cutting the bias tape and doing the small work, cutting the threads. You'll need something for that. You don't want to use your scissors that you're going to use to cut the t-shirt to cut the same thread. And for the dress portion, we'll need elastic. This is 1/2 inch elastic. And of course, you'll need a sewing machine and an iron. Let's get started with tailoring basics. So we're gonna start by learning how to deepen the neckline. One really easy way to do it is to just go right in and cut out your existing neckline very close to the seam. Or if you want to do more of a, like 80s wide neck, you can go ahead and use your tailor's chalk. Just mark it. I'll do kind of a blend of the two just to be able to teach both of them. So I'm gonna go a 1/2 inch wider than the current neckline. I'm just gonna take my ruler and put the 1/2 inch mark right on the seam. And I'm gonna draw another 1/2 inch mark. Going all the way around. Now you can take your chalk and just connect the dots. I usually don't like to go as deep in the back because if you cut your neck too wide, it can like fall off your shoulder so much that you kind of get exposed. So usually for the back, I'll just start tapering in that 1/2 inch. So I'll put my ruler at 3/8 of an inch, and then 1/4. Then mirror that on the other side. And go ahead and connect those dots. Now you can take your scissors. I usually like to start kind of at a shoulder seam, but it doesn't matter really where you start as long as you don't start in the direct center front or center back. And just go along and cut right along that line that you just drew. Okay, so now that is prepped and ready to sew. Before we go to the sewing machine though, let's do 2 more alterations. So let's work on the cap sleeves. So you want to flatten out your sleeve as best as possible. And you may want to try your t-shirt on before you do this just to see, where do I really want this to fall? This t-shirt already has kind of a feminine sleeve shape, so I'm just going to take it up about 1 inch. So I'm going to grab my ruler, just give myself 1 inch mark right there. Now I'm going to go right in and just make this parallel. If your sleeve is a boxier shape, you're probably going to have to angle your ruler to be not parallel with this because it will probably, you know, be more squared off. So you're going to want to go in and make that angle. That angle is what really makes the cap sleeve look like a cap. Okay, and then you can just go right ahead and cut this flat. Go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, now we're gonna go into the hemming portion. So I like to throw the t-shirt on before I decide where the hem's gonna fall. But I think that this shirt would look very cute as a crop top. I'm gonna find my belly button and just put some tailor's chalk right on it. Now, you can choose wherever you want this to land. You can do it right at your waistband of your pants. You could do it right at the bottom of your ribs. And I don't really recommend going any higher than the bottom of your ribs because you want to take account for when you reach your arms up. How much is this shirt going to pull up? So I'm going to expose, you know, this much above my belly button when I raise my arms. So just keep that in mind when you make your mark, that you like where it is, even when your arms are raised. So now I'm going to go in and measure where my mark is. And we're at 10 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to lower it and make it a nice even 10 inches. Because we are going to be hemming this, so it's going to get a little bit shorter anyways. Actually, I'm going to do 9 1/2. So just go around and mark 9 1/2 inches from the bottom hem. Notice that t-shirts are not always perfect or straight, so just make more marks than you need so that we can true it, and the ones that are kind of off will just end up getting evened out. Okay, so now grab your ruler, match as many marks as you can, and just go right in, and let's draw our line. Alright, now we can just cut right along that line. Make sure it's nice and flat. I feel a little buckle on the back side here. I'm just going to flatten that out. And we're ready to sew. We're going to start on the neckline first, and in order to do that, we're going to need to cut some bias tape. So this is how I do it. Take my tape, and I unravel some. Yours might not be on a roll, it might be a little card. Just grab the neckline of your t-shirt and align the tape with your fingers. You want to start at a shoulder seam and end at the same shoulder seam. And it's always good to give yourself 2 or 3 inches just for good measure, because the t-shirt will stretch. You do not want to run out of bias tape. So now you're going to open your bias tape like a book. And we're going to stitch it to the front side of the shirt, right in here, right on the edge of that page of the book, if you will. So grab your shoulder seam, place your bias tape there. Go ahead and pin it, and we're going to run it through the sewing machine. Now notice this is the right side of the fabric of the t-shirt, the side that you wear to the public. Make sure you pull tension on your bias tape to stretch it. Before you pull, it is great to sink the needle into the fabric so that you don't just pull your whole foot off of where you were sewing. Doing shorter sections and sinking the needle in will help you get around those tight curves. Okay, so when you get to where you started, you are going to want to fold down the flap, the little tail that you did not sew when you first started, and just go right up to that tail, but not over it, and reverse your stitching so that it really holds. Now that you've reached the end, just want to lift up your foot, trim your threads, and we're going to go ahead and cut the tail off so that it matches the little flap that we started with. We're just going to go ahead and put a stitch right here between both layers. Of the bias tape only. Okay, now that that is done, we're just going to open this right up, fold it over, and now we're going to stitch on the wrong side of the fabric. We're just going to fold this down and stitch right along the edge. When you're done, you can see that on the outside you have a nice finished edge, and on the inside too. For this next step, we're going to learn how to do a baby roll hem, and we're going to do that on our cap sleeves. The reason why we're doing a baby roll hem is because it is the smallest hem, and it's going to allow us to have the nicest finish on the sleeve. You want to turn your garment inside out. Find your armpit seam and just make a small 1/4 inch fold over. Once you've done that, you want to just snip your threads. And if you're working with silk or something like chiffon, you might want to go ahead and just trim this inner flap to get really tight to your stitching. But for this purpose, for the t-shirt, it's really not a big deal if there's a 1/4 inch folded under there. So we're going to move on to step 2, which is folding this hem down on itself, and we're just going to stitch right on top of the stitching that we just did. Always start with the armpit seam when you're working on sleeves. Okay, so now that's done. The only step left is just to put this through the iron so that it gets nice and flat. And as you can see, we have a cute little baby hem on that cap sleeve. Now we're going to work on the bottom hem, and for this we're going to use a roll hem. So how you want to do this one, so you're going to fold your fabric over about 1/2 inch, and then you're going to just tuck that tail under again. Throw a pin in there to start. And if you wish, you can prep the whole entire thing by doing your roll hem ahead of time and throwing pins in it. Or you can roll as you go. You want to stitch on the far left edge, but not over it, or you'll lose your roll. So when you're done, it should look like this on the inside and have a nice finished edge on the right side. There we go, our crop top is coming to life. The next step is just to send this through the iron and the cap sleeve through the iron. And that concludes t-shirt tailoring basics. Thanks for sticking around for part 1.